Okay, the asset section. Parents, they're going to ask you to give your current balance of cash, savings, and checking on the FAFSA. They really do want you to get out your wallet and see how much cash you have, how much you have in your checking account, and how much you have in your savings account. So here's my recommendation to you. If you get paid on the 26th of the month, what's the best date to file a FAFSA? The 25th. I'm not trying to tell you to, lie to the government or anything, but really they want to know as of that date how much do you have. So you want to pull that out and get that as accurate as possible. You may have to provide some information about your investments. And you'll see here they mention some of the investments that you have to include. And this is the net value. And you'll see it says real estate here. And it's important for me to tell you, you never have to list the value of your home. So not your own home, but if you own other real estate like rental property, or maybe you own a home on the beach somewhere, you have to report that, but you don't ever have to list your own home. You have to list money market funds, mutual funds, stocks, bonds. If you have CDs, you have to list all those things. You have to list 529 savings plans. If you have any little capped accounts from Kentucky, or you have any 529 KESPT plans, you have to figure out the value of those and make sure that you include those on the FAFSA form. Now, in addition, they may ask you the value of your business and your investment farm. And the business is kind of interesting. If any of you own a business, you do have to include the market value of the land and the buildings and the machinery and the equipment. But if the family owns and controls more than 50% of the business, and the business has 100 or fewer full-time employees, then you do not have to report it at all. So for a lot of families, that just eliminates the business. And then the investment farm, if you have a farm, if you live on that farm and you operate it, you don't have to report that. But if you own a farm to the side, you will have to report that. Now, I already told you, you don't have to include your home, but no, you also don't ever have to include the value of any life insurance plans. If you have a retirement plan set aside, you don't have to provide the value of the retirement plan. Congress says that if you have those things, they're yours, and you're going to need those for retirement. I oftentimes get families say, well, I have stocks that I use. Well, for my retirement, that's fine, but that's not a designated retirement plan. So you have to make sure it's designated, but if it is, you never ever have to do that. And again, I said it's the value as of the day it's completed. And just note that if any of you have assets, but the net worth is $1 million or more, you're going to enter 999,999. Don't we all wish that? And if the net value is zero, make sure you put something in the box and you list zero so that we're aware and you don't just skip that question. All right, again, a couple questions not on the worksheet in this section with parents. Parent email address. Parents, you get a chance to list an email, and students will have a chance to list an email. The results of this FAFSA are going to go to this email address. So I would recommend you putting in a parent email or making sure the student is one where you're going to get it. Some parents open up a separate email account completely just so they can keep the results. But you want it to be a solid email. I mean, my son changes his email a lot. You want to make sure it's an email that everybody knows so that you can get accurate data there. They also really don't list this question on the worksheet, and this is a big one because we get asked all the time, does it matter if I have 6 people in my household versus 2? And it does. They ask you on the FAFSA how many people are in the household, and you'll note that it always includes the student, and it always includes the parent, or the parents if it's a 2-parent household. And then parents, you can count your other children if you're providing more than half of that child's support. So if you have a 37-year-old child that comes back home, if you're providing over half of that child's support, sorry about your luck, but you can include that child in your household. Also, if you have a child that if they did the FAFSA form, they could answer no to all those questions, then you get to count that child. So let's say you have a child that went off to school to Murray, and he's on his own. He doesn't really live with you, but if he did the FAFSA, he would have to list you on it, then you can include that child as well. And then parents, you can include other people if they live with you now, and maybe you provide over half of that person's support, and you will continue to support them throughout the year. We see this a lot. Parents take care of an older parent, like the student's grandparent, or maybe a niece or a nephew. You can count them if you're providing over half of that child's support. Then they ask the question, of those people in the household, how many of those people are in college? And this is it's always the student. Sometimes when people put 0, it's at least 1 because we know the student's going to college. And then you can include other household members if they will attend at least half-time in the year and they're in a program that leads to a degree or certificate. You can't just let somebody who decides to take a class here and there for the fun of it. They have to be working on an actual degree or certificate. No, parents, you can never be included as a member in college on the FAFSA. Congress says if you go back to school that probably your employers are paying for it and you're not, and so you can't include them. But if any of you parents decide to go back to school, you want to contact the college or university and let them know, because we oftentimes can work with you and add you back in through a process called professional judgment if you truly are paying for your way. And you never include a student at a military academy because the family doesn't pay for his or her education. All right, another question that's not on the worksheet. They ask you, how much did you pay in taxes? This is a question that's missed a lot on the FAFSA. They want to know, how much did you pay in taxes? And it's not the amount that comes out of your check on your W-2. You know, you get your little box there. Or that's not the amount withheld. It's the amount actually taken out of your taxes and that you're paying to the government. Not taken out, but what you're paying based on that tax return. I'm just going to give you these line item numbers if you want to jot them down. If you file a 1040, this is copied, it's line 55. If you file a 1040A, this is line 35. And if you file a 1040EZ, it's line 11. So you might just want to make a note so that you can pull that right off your tax return. They also ask for the number of exemptions. This is the number of people that are claimed on the tax return. And it doesn't matter how many people are in the household. Claiming has nothing to do with how many people are in the household, but they do ask this question. Typically that's line 6E, so you want to make sure you get that. All right, this is where we move quickly now because we switch over to the student section. And students, no, you're going to be asked the same questions that your parents are asked. Now, students, if you didn't have to list parental data, this is where you pick back up and you will have to answer these same questions if you're independent. And if you're married, you'll be answering them about your spouse. But they ask, did the student file a tax return? You're going to answer that same question. Maybe the student didn't file a tax return. That's fine. They would just mark they didn't file. But then they say, how much did the student earn from work? And again, if the student is just working some odd jobs here and there, maybe babysitting, they're going to have to report that, how much they earned on the FAFSA. If they have real jobs, you know, W-2s, they're going to want to make sure they report that. And then they ask those exact same questions. Again, how much did you earn from working? Not just if you filed a tax return, adjust your gross income, and then how much did you earn from working? Then you get to the next section here. That's okay. You get to the next section here. We've already seen these questions. If you're independent, this will be the first time you've seen this question, but did anybody in the household have those unique programs? And then the student has to report additional financial aid information, here on the left, and untaxed income on the right. For most students, they don't have either of these, but you want to check and make sure. And then they're going to ask about the student's assets and the student investment farm. And note, those are the exact same things that we mentioned before. You know, the same assets, cash, savings, and checking. We want to check mutual funds and CDs and stocks if the student has that in his or her name. If the student is independent, they're going to ask just for the student's household size. And you see it's always a student and the spouse if married, the student's children if they have a child, and then other people if they live with that student and they provide over half of that child's support. Now, if you're dependent, you're never even asked these questions. Number in college. Number in college is also asked if you're independent, so you would include the student, and if anybody else in that household is going to college, you would go to college.